all to close your eyes. Close your eyes and think back when you were a little kid. Did you ever want to do something really remarkable with your life as a little kid? Did you ever want to be a superhero? How many of you ever wanted to do the amazing? Who wanted to do more than amazing? How many of you ever wanted to do the impossible and change the world? Now open your eyes. My name is Dan Meyer, and as a little kid, I always wanted to do the impossible. I had a fascination with things that made people go, wow, that made people think in amazement. So I've always wanted to do the impossible. But I had a little problem. The first 20 years of my life, I grew up in extreme fear. The night before my 21st birthday, when I was on my deathbed, two things happened in one day that would change my life forever. But today is a day I've been looking forward to for many, many years, because today is a day I'm going to actually attempt to do the impossible right before your very eyes, right here in Costa Mesa. Now, I gotta tell you, I'm a little bit nervous up here. I don't really deserve to be in the same room with all you folks. I am no multimillionaire investor. I'm no Shark Tank guy. I'm not some corporate CEO investor. I'm not a big motivational speaker or anything. I'm just a scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid. I don't know if you can see my hands are shaking like nuts. I'm a scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid from a small town in Indiana, from a middle-class Midwestern family in the middle of the Midwest. But I had big dreams to do the impossible. And they asked me to speak to you on doing the impossible. That's what we're going to do today. I'm here to prove to you the impossible is not impossible. I'm going to kind of mess with your minds. I want to make you think in new ways. I want to challenge your perceptions of what's real, what's impossible, and what's really possible if you just believe. You guys like stories? Yeah. You okay with stories? Okay, that might make it a little bit easier for me too. Like most of you, I started life as a little kid. How many of you started life as a little kid? About a third of you, okay. And the rest of you, what? You were born full grown? Man, I want to meet your mama. Talk about impossible. Well, in my quest to do the impossible, I found there are two things that are universal among people around the world. Like a double-edged sword, everybody has fears. Say fears. Fears. And everybody has dreams. Say dreams. Dreams. In my life, there were three things that caused me to do the impossible: dodgeball, Superman, and mosquito. So I'm going to take on my little story. Now, I don't know if you've noticed in the past couple of days, or yesterday at least, that so many of the speakers talked about fears, and they talked about dreams, and they talked about finding your purpose and calling. And I think it's a little bit more than a coincidence that we're all here talking about the same thing over and over. Don't you think that's kind of funny? I believe God has a very funny sense of humor. And I'm going to prove that here today, I think. So, on October 4th, 2007, my heart was racing, my knees were shaking as I stepped foot on the stage at the legendary Sanders Theater at Harvard University to accept the 2007 Ig Nobel Prize in Medicine. The little medical research paper I co-wrote called Sword Swallowing and Side Effects that was published in a little magazine I had never read before, something called the British Medical Journal, which is pretty huge. And for somebody like me, it was an impossible dream come true. It was an unexpected surprise. It was an honor I would never, ever forget. But it wasn't the most memorable day of my life. On October 4th, 1967, a scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid stepped in front of his class. His heart was racing, his knees were shaking as he stepped in front of his class to speak. He opened his mouth and he stood there sick to his stomach, terrified in tears, paralyzed in panic, frozen in fear. That scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid suffered from extreme fears. He was afraid of the dark. He was afraid of heights. He was afraid of spiders and snakes. Any of you? He was afraid of water and sharks, doctors and nurses and dentists, and needles and drills and sharp objects. But more than anything, he was afraid of people. He suffered from low self-esteem, inferiority complex, fear of failure and rejection, and something we didn't even know you could sign up for back then, something called social anxiety disorder. That scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid was me. Because I had fears, the bullies would tease me and beat me up. They used to laugh and call me names. They never let me play in any of their reindeer games. Okay, there was one game they let me play in. I don't know if you guys ever played it or not. Dodgeball. And I was not a good dodger. The bullies would call my name, and I'd look up and I'd see those pink dodgeballs hurtling at my face at supersonic speed, and I'd think, why is that pink dot getting bigger? And then it hit me. Bam, bam, bam! And I remember many days walking home from school. My face was red and stinging. My ears were red and ringing. My eyes were burning with tears. And their words were burning my ears. And whoever said sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me, it's a lie. Words can cut like a knife. Words can pierce like a sword. Words can make wounds that are so deep they can't be seen. So I had fears, and words were my worst enemy. Still are, today. But I also had dreams. I would run home and I would escape the Superman comics, and I dreamed I wanted to be a superhero like Superman. I wanted to fly around the world doing superhuman feats and saving lives. Any of you guys want to do that? And my superhero, my biggest superhero, was my dad. My dad said, you can be anything you want to be. So I decided when I grew up, I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be awesome. I wanted to do something that was more than amazing, something that the other kids could not do. And I would go home and I would read Ripley's Believe It or Not book and Guinness Book of World Records. Any of you guys read Guinness or Ripley's books? Yeah. And I saw real people doing real feats. And I said, if those bullies won't let me play in their sports games, I want to do real magic, real feats, do things the other kids cannot do. I want to find my purpose and calling. I want to know my life has meaning. I want to do something really remarkable with my life and somehow change the world. I want to prove the impossible is not impossible. Fast forward 10 years. It was the week before my 21st birthday. And two things happened in one day that would change my life forever. I was a missionary in India. I was a short-term Lutheran missionary in southern India, in Tamil Nadu. And before I went to India, I prayed a little prayer and asked God for three things. I said, I want you to give me some way of connecting with the Indian people. Number two, break my spirit. I was kind of like a wild colt. I wanted you to just break my spirit and humble me, give me humility. And number three, show me my purpose and calling, what it is I'm supposed to do. And so I got over there and I found out I had a knack for languages. I love languages. I study a lot of languages. And I had a knack, and I was living in Tamil Nadu, so they speak Tamil there. And I learned to read and write Tamil. It has 240-some characters in language. And it was really kind of cool. And so I started to introduce myself. And I found out that my last name, Meyer, means hair. So I would introduce myself, and we would do this 10 to 12 times a day all over the country. And I would introduce myself, and I'd say, Yen Peru Daniel Meyer, Yemaku Fengenir Meyer. So Yen Peru Daniel Meyer, my name is Daniel Meyer, and Yen Fengu, Yemaku Fengenir Meyer means I have golden colored hair. And Indian people would laugh, and they'd chuckle, and we really broke down the walls. I thought, prayer number one, check, it worked. So did that for several months, and towards the end of the time there, a missionary pulled me aside and he said, do you know what you're saying? I said, yeah. Yen Pero Daniel Meyer, my name is Daniel Meyer. Yenaku Tenganir Meyer, I have golden colored hair. Meyer means hair, right? And he said, well, yeah, it actually means pubic hair. Talk about being humiliated. Hair number two, check. After that, they called me Goldilocks. Those Indian people must have thought, man, those Americans are so open. I'm Daniel Meyer, and I have golden-colored hair. TMI. So, it was a week before my 21st birthday, and my mentor, my buddy Greg Ormson, asked me, he said, "Do you have thrones, Daniel?" I said, "Thrones? What are thrones?" He said, "Thrones are major life goals, like a bucket list. Like if you could do anything you wanted to do, be anything you wanted to be, go anywhere you wanted to go, where would you, what would you do, who would you be, where would you go?" I said, "Oh man, I can't do that. I'm too scared. I got too many fears." That night, I took my little rice mat up on the roof of the bungalow. It was 105 degrees out. We had no electricity. And I stretched out under the stars to watch the bats dive bomb from mosquitoes. And all I could think about was thrones and goals and fears and those bullies with the dodgeballs. A few hours later, I woke up. My heart was racing. My knees were shaking. But this time it was not with fear. My entire body was convulsing, wet with sweat, my brain burning up with 105-degree malaria fever. And for the next week, I was in and out of consciousness on my deathbed, fighting for my life with malaria fever. And every time I was conscious, all I could think about was thrones and goals and what I wanted to do with my life. Finally, the night before my 21st birthday, two things happened that would change my life. In a moment of clarity, I came to a realization. I realized that that little tiny mosquito, Anopheles stevensii, that little mosquito that weighed less than 5 micrograms, less than a grain of salt, if that little mosquito could take out a 180-pound kid, I realized that mosquito was my kryptonite. And then I realized, no, it's not the mosquito. It's even smaller than that. It's the little parasite inside the mosquito, Plasmodium falciparum, that at that time killed over 1 million people a year. And then I realized, no, it's even smaller than that. But to me, it seems so much greater. I realized that fear was my kryptonite, my parasite, that had crippled and paralyzed me my entire life. And there's a difference between danger and fear. Danger is real. Fear is a choice. And I realized I had a choice. I could either live in fear and die a failure that night, or I could face my fears and embrace my dreams and dare to live. And it's a lot of times it's at your deathbed or at the point of death that life really begins. It's at the edge of death that begins the point of life. Everybody dies. Not everyone really lives. Learn to die. Dare to live. Put your fears to death. So I prayed a little prayer that night and I said, "God, if you let me make it to my 21st birthday, I will not let fear rule my life any longer. I'm going to put my fears to death. I'm going to kill my fears. I'm going to dare to take on risks and challenges. I want to dare to live. I want to find my purpose and calling. I want to know my life has meaning. I want to do something really remarkable with my life and somehow prove the impossible is not impossible." Now, I won't tell you if I survived until my 21st birthday or not. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. But that night, the second thing happened. I made my list of my first 10 thrones. And I decided, what the heck, I'll just give it a crazy list. I'm just going to go for it. So I made a list that I wanted to visit all the major continents of the world. I wanted to visit the 7 wonders of the world. I wanted to learn a bunch of languages. I wanted to live on a ship in the ocean. I wanted to live on a deserted island. I wanted to live with a tribe of Indians in the Amazon. I wanted to work with a circus. I wanted to work in the music business in Nashville. I wanted to climb to the top of the highest mountain in Sweden. I wanted to see Mount Everest at sunrise, and I wanted to jump out of an airplane. Those are my first 10 thrones. And that list kind of changed my life. And here's one thing that I learned.